Hi there, I'm Dre, the host and founder of the Dragon Network, an online membership-based community where health IT professionals can share ideas, discuss experiences, and collaborate with one another on all things health IT. On this week's video, I want to talk about the difference between a data lake and a data warehouse. And that's because I'm working on a data analytics project right now for one of my clients, and the topic seems to be coming up quite frequently. But before I jump in, if you haven't had a chance to subscribe to the channel yet, go ahead and do that. And make sure you set your notifications so you're notified each week when I post a new video. Okay, so let's jump into data lake versus data warehouse. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read the definitions just off Wikipedia. They are fairly robust definitions of both. And then we'll go into what some of the key differences are between both the data warehouse and the data lake and how they would be utilized in a health IT environment or within a healthcare organization. So the definition for a data warehouse, again off of Wikipedia, is a system used for reporting and data analysis and is considered a core component of business intelligence. Data warehouses are central repositories of integrated data from one or more disparate sources. They store content and historical data in one single place that are used for creating analytical reports for workers throughout the enterprise. So in comparison, the Wikipedia definition of a data lake is a system or repository of data stored in its natural or raw format, usually object blobs or files. A data lake is usually a single store of data, including raw copies of source system data, sensor data, social data, etc., and transformational data used for tasks such as reporting, visualization, advanced analytics, and machine learning. A data lake can include structured data from relational databases, rows or columns, semi-structured data, CSV logs, XML, JSON, unstructured data, emails, documents, PDFs, and binary data, images, audio, and video. So those two definitions, you can start to see what some of the key components are between the two. And the most important one is the differences in the data types that are stored, as well as the purpose for the actual data store itself. So what is the data going to be used for and how is it best leveraged? So when we're looking at a data warehouse is typically something that is taking disparate systems and it is bringing the data together in a single place so that you can consistently run reports and generate analytics for distribution off of that database. So it is typically something that's coming from relational database with rows and columns. It may have some unstructured data that is housed within it. However, that unstructured data usually has a structured wrapper around it. So when we think of unstructured data for health environments, if we're talking about free text notes, for example, that type of information can be in there, but it's wrapped within a format that indicates what note it's for and who authored it, things like that. So that type of stuff is in there. It's not 100% structured tagged data. However, by and large, it is known data from a known source with known attributes that are tagged within the data, and it is actually organized in such a way that within the data warehouse, it is all structured and set up in file type systems or in a logical format. The data lake, on the other hand, if you think about it as just a giant pool of data, any kind of data type in any kind of format. So it is just a place to send data or to pull data into that is going to hold it there in its original form, whether that be structured, unstructured, binary, or raw. So who uses a data lake versus who uses a data warehouse? A data warehouse is typically utilized by your reporting and analytics teams within a healthcare environment. They are running queries on that database and they're going after combinations of those rows and columns and separate file structures to put information together, combining those systems in a known way. So they understand what they're looking for, they write their queries or reports on top of it, and they're going to pull that out combined and send it wherever they need to send it or extract it in whatever format they need to form it in. So your reporting analysts that work in data warehouses are very aware of the structure that lives within inside that data warehouse, and that's what they're going to use to generate all of their queries and reporting. But they have a familiarity, an intimate familiarity with the system itself and how it's structured. So they're going to pull things out of there that they know they're looking for. They have a question and they're going to write the query or report to get that answer out of that database because they know the disparate system information pieces have been placed in that warehouse. A data lake, on the other hand, is a little bit different because all the information that lives within that data lake is just placed there in an unorganized, if you will, or a raw format. So it's just all fed into there. There are absolutely meta tags in there. There are markers that allow you to combine things together, but it doesn't have anywhere near the structure that the data within a data warehouse does, and that's on purpose. So what you're looking at for a data lake is a whole bunch of different types of data that you are going to be able to run analytics and queries against to sort of figure out how it would relate to each other. So when you're going into a data lake to answer questions, you may not actually know the specific question you're looking to ask when you go in there. So you may instead be looking for trends, for patterns. You may be applying some machine learning so that it can just look at things over time and figure out what's going on. You're not going in there with a very specific intent all the time and a very specific set of parameters to pull, XYZ data out of that. You absolutely can do that, but that's not always what you're doing. You're looking at it more from a overarching, robust place where all the data, you're going to figure out how it relates to each other and you're going to learn things out of it. So in a data lake, you tend to have data scientists who are looking to put that data together and find those trends and figure that out. You've also got a lot of researchers that are typically in there because they're looking to validate data relations or they're looking for anomalies that are occurring, things like that. So on the data warehouse side, it's typically your IT reporting analytics staff. And on the data lake side, it is typically researchers, data scientists, as well as some of your reporting and analytics staff if they're looking for specific things. So to summarize what the differences between a data lake and a data warehouse are, here's a grid that's going to walk us through the 5 key differences between the two. So with respect to data types, as I've mentioned, a data lake has structured, semi-structured, unstructured, and binary data. So it's pulling data in raw form as well as processed form, and it is keeping it all in one spot. A data warehouse, on the other hand, contains structured data and processed data where quantitative metrics and their attributes have been applied to that data. So with respect to the schema that is applied to the data within those environments, a data lake defines the schema after the data has been placed into the data lake. So it uses an extract, load, and transform process that is also known as schema on read. The data warehouse, on the other hand, defines the schema before the data is stored in the data warehouse. It uses an extract, transform, and load process, which is also known as a schema on write. So it's important when you're looking at things when you're working with analytics platforms and you're working on analytics projects to understand that there is ELT and ETL, and those are 2 different things, and they're going to give you some insight into whether you're working on a data lake or a data warehouse because of where that schema is applied. So is the transform happening after the load or is the transform happening before the load? So the next one on here is that on a data lake side, as I mentioned, the purpose of the data has not yet been decided. So you're just going to put all that data inside of that data lake and you haven't quite figured out what the data is going to be used for, but you want to start compiling that data and you're going to look for queries and add things to that data over time. So you're just going to get it all in one place so that it's there and it's ready for you. And as things come up or as you notice patterns, that's when you're going to start to utilize the data. A data warehouse, on the other hand, the data that's going in there already has a specific and defined use. You may put more data in there than you need for your particular query, but you have an idea of why that data is going over there. The schema is applied on the way in, and when you're writing the reports and analytics off that environment, there are specific things that you're looking for. So there is an intent to the data that's in that data warehouse. On the data lake side, they are highly accessible and very quick to update. So you can pull information out and utilize that data inside that database to respond to your questions or to respond to your pattern making, things like that very quickly. And that's because the schema is applied again at the end. On a data warehouse side, it takes quite a bit longer to make changes to what's going to happen in there. They're often complicated and very time consuming, and that again is because the schema needs to be applied before the data lands in the data warehouse. So that takes quite a bit of effort and quite a bit of analysis and mapping and things that need to happen before it lands over there. Last but certainly not least, on the data lake side, the storage is separated from the compute. So you have a data store where everything is housed, and then you have the compute, which can be separated from it because that transformation, that use of data is actually happening after the fact. On the data warehouse side, the compute and the storage are actually tightly tied together. And again, that's because all the data and all the schema and the metadata are applied before it lands in there. So you need to keep those two things close together. So those are the two main places we get analytics data from a healthcare organization perspective or from a multi-organization perspective. You will start to see, or you are starting to see over time, more groups of people, more organizations lean towards those data lakes. And that is just because of the sheer volume of information that we're getting in our healthcare space with the Internet of Things coming on, with all of our connected APIs and things like that. We just want to figure out how to get that data into a place where it can be leveraged when we need to leverage it, but we're not exactly sure what we're going to leverage it for yet. And we need all different data types in there, including those audio, video files, things like that. Data warehouses have been up and running for quite some time. There are some very, very robust data warehouses, some very complex data warehouses that exist. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. They do serve a very strong purpose, and they will continue to exist in healthcare environments for the reporting analytics needs that we have today from a business perspective. So one last thing I want to mention before I go, if you ever come across the term data swamp, it may seem a little bit confusing. It certainly was for me the first time I saw it. A data swamp is actually kind of just like what it sounds. It is a completely unmanaged data lake. So it's a data lake that has been set up at some point in time, but there isn't anything sort of on top of it that is helping it to transform or to be utilized, or it is a giant pool of data that is no longer accessible, so that compute layer isn't connected at all, and it is providing little value to the organization, but it's hanging out there in case someone wants to utilize it later. So you don't see many data swamps yet, but I do think as we add more data lakes to the mix, we have to keep in mind and we have to be cognizant that we may come across some data swamps in the future. And with health IT projects, we may in the years to come be asked to participate in projects or initiatives that help us resurrect those data swamps or figure out what we're going to do with them. So that is all I have for today's video. I hope that it was helpful and it gives you a better idea of the difference between a data lake and a data warehouse. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day. I will see you again next week.